Claudine.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for coming and share your research. It was very impressive. I saw your presentation last time.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Okay, so for hi folks, we are gonna talk the Claudine's topic, the fears of war when victims are combatants. So could you tell me a little brief introduce about the issue one more time?
Okay. So what I did was I took the concept of victim and combatant and I tried to put them together. Because most of the time when you hear victims, you hear women. When you hear combatants, you hear men. And I was asking myself, what about men who are actually victims? Do we see them as victims, as combatants, or where do we class them? So that's how the whole idea of victims, when victims become combatants, research came out.
I see. Thank you. Also, I think you referred the master narrative, and what are they?
The master narratives are actually what I'm just explaining, or what I just explained, is the fact that we usually see women as victims, as the one who actually fall, the submissive, especially in time of conflict, and we see men as the combatant, as the active agent, as the person who's actually going to go and commit crime. But we never really try to look at differently. We never really try to see men as victim of violence or even sexual violence. We don't really want to think about women committing violence against other women or against other men. So those master narratives have blocked us from seeing some of those maybe exceptional cases, but they're still there and they're still they still need to be noticed.
I see. I think your issue is very important and very interesting. That how you find those male victims, why you feel interested in this field?
So why I felt interested is because I'm from Africa, and civil war, mass killing, ethnic cleansing, that has been part of the African history for centuries and centuries. And as a survivor myself of some of those actually killings, I was interested in what's behind the concept of victims, what's behind the concept of perpetrator, what are combatants, what are non-combatants. So all those really big concepts, big words in the international conventions, I was like, they might not be applicable in some of those cases. Why they're not applicable, and what needs to be done to actually include all those people we think as outcasts and recognize them as victims of something. And so I guess the idea behind it was to try to empower, especially men, because usually we try to empower women and children, but not the men, because we assume that they're the one that commit all those crimes. So I was like, no, we need to empower men too, to actually see them as victim of the society, victim of the narrative, or victim of anything else. Because at one point they were victim, and they will always be victim. So that's the idea behind it.
Yeah, okay. So you talk about genocide, gendercide, and what it is, and in what context it applicable in time of conflict, civil wars, and mass cleansing.
So a gendercide is when you actually target people based on the gender. So a genocide is based on ethnicity and things like that, but gendercide is based on gender. And in most conflict, men are the one targeted. Women are also targeted, but not the same way. Men are targeted and they're actually killed. Women are targeted as a way to actually gain power over the community, over the men, and also they're used as a tool most of the time. So how genocide is used in civil war, ethnic cleansing, or even genocide is we usually target one gender. We usually target one gender, and that's the one we actually focus on, and the other one most likely is going to be just a tool, an instrument to get over to that person to actually gain power and things like that.
I remember on your presentation you talk many about the examples in Congo. Do you think is there a reason that you specifically call Congo has more gender side issues?
I don't think Congo has more, because we also saw a lot of genocide in Sierra Leone, like West Africa, even Southern Africa. Like I don't think it's something specific to Congo and Uganda. It's just the conflict in Congo has been going on for almost 2 decades, and it's not getting better. It's just not getting better. And some of the story now we're actually hearing, based on the fact that the conflict is still happening, are Congolese stories. And the problem with having male victims or focusing on male victims is the data we actually collect is not always accurate. We don't always have the accurate number of victims because it is taboo for an African culture, for really a collective culture where we have this master narrative of men supposed to protect women, men are supposed to be the guardian, the warrior. Having men as a victim, it's really taboo because it means that he actually lost his power, he actually lost his credibility, and most of the time, like, no women want to actually be associated to a man who's been sexually assaulted or even just victim of something. So that's why we actually, like, that's why my research was mostly focused on Congolese in the eastern region of Africa, because that's where most of the data are actually coming from.
How are understanding a gender component of conflict affecting peace building?
Understanding of gender is actually really interesting because most people, when you talk about gender, the first thing they have in mind is feminism, it's women. We usually don't even really think about men. We don't even talk about the LGBT or like what other group. We really focus on women, and because of that, we actually like block our visions and we just see what's in front of us. We don't want to see what's around or behind us. We just focus on one point. And how that's actually affecting peace building. And a lot of time, like peace building, especially in those collective society, those really patriarchal society, peace building is among men. That's it. They're the one who hold the key to wisdom, to whatever men are supposed to be the one who bring peace building. Lately, we have been witnessing a lot of more female peace building action, like in Sudan, in Somalia, in some part of Southeast Asia. Sorry. So we slowly are starting to see that women can actually be influential in peace building, and that's good because we're actually opening up the gender component of peace building. But the problem is we still have those really fixed traditional culture of men are the one holding the key, women not really, they're behind as submissive people. But then when you bring that back to men are being victimized by the community and they cannot be part of the peace building process, how do you reconcile with that? Like when a male is a victim, his entire community don't see him as a real man, which means other men, the one that actually are supposed to be part of the peace building process, just ignore his case, ignore him because he's taboo, because he's unwanted, because he's outcast. So they don't address those type of issues that actually are more and more controversial, because we're hearing more and more men actually talking about their victimhood, talking about how they're victims of sexual violence committed against them by men and also by other women. So peace building for those type of sexual violence against men is still really tricky, because those who actually are part of the peace building process are totally ignoring their case. They're just looking at what they need for the community, and they don't really look at those specific, really targeted victims.
I see. Okay, I think it's about maybe the last question.
Okay.
So, do you think in order to peace building and those how the international society can do more passive action towards helping the male victims?
Oh, that's a tricky question. I guess first, the master narrative is actually hurting more than it's helping. So by understanding that there are a lot of nuances in those really important and critical concept of victim, perpetrator, and things like that. That they are not supposed to be gender based, but individual based. Like we cannot say man or perpetrator because they are men. We should say this person is a perpetrator because he did this and this. So by breaking up this master narrative that are actually helping to perpetrate more of those crimes or to just silence the victims, that will open a door to more peace building actions. Second, by actually recognizing that men are victims of sexual violence. Like we know that men are victims of slavery. We know that men are victims, especially little boys, are victims of sexual slavery. We shouldn't just dismiss the fact that some men are victims of sexual violence, especially in time of war, because it's a way to actually gain power over a person. It's a way to like really like install your like power. So by really recognizing those two elements, so the master narrative and the counter narrative that needs to be pushed, by recognizing that those labels are not as fixed but nuanced, and that those people deserve recognition, those people deserve a sense of justice. But justice also is a different concept that needs to be redefined. But by actually looking at those different components, we can start opening a dialogue on peace building, on what are the next steps that needs to be taken to help those men. Because most of the humanitarian aids finance, most of the humanitarian aids and the resources put to help sexual violence or sexual assault are mostly targeted women, and there's no resource for men. Like so, by actually understanding that now men also needs to be considered, they need to be empowered, and they need to have the same treatment as women have when they're also sexually assaulted. That's gonna help us to help them. Like we need to help them because the society it's creating a circle and is not a healthy one.
I see. Okay, thank you for sharing all your thoughts. It's very interesting and eye-opening for me.
You're welcome.
And thank